Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. If everyone could give their name, pronouns, and any identities that they would like to share.
Parker, would you like to go first?
Hey, I'm Parker Webb, he, they, Executive Director of Lidditz Chooses Love, and we are a local LGBTQ plus support organization located in Lancaster County, PA.
Awesome. Rhea, how about you?
My name is Rhea, pronoun she, her, hers, and I volunteer with Lidditz Chooses Love, but my primary amount of work happens with the coalition. And Day, you want to go on?
Yes, my name is Day Pope, she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Civic Engagement with a group called TAKE, and I'm also one of the co-founders of the PA Coalition for Trans Youth. So we're excited to share so much more about what we're about today.
Absolutely. So this wonderful team from PA Coalition for Trans Youth is just going to share a little bit about their organization, what they do, who they help, and a little bit about what they've learned as an organization in the field of trans youth advocacy. And I'm going to let them get started.
Thanks so much, Robin and CAGD, for hosting us. And thanks for everybody who's tuning in to watch. We're so glad you're here. We really will go through just a little bit about who we are, why we've been organizing the way that we have been, and then whether or not you're in Pennsylvania or your other places around the United States or even international, we want to share insights that you could use in your organizing and hope to get connected. So just to start off with how we began the PA Coalition for Trans Youth, in 2021 in Pennsylvania, a bill called HB 972 was introduced, and its intent was to ban trans young people in schools from participating in sports and using the facilities like bathrooms and locker rooms that match their gender. And these types of bills have been introduced across the country over the last few years in a flood that has been unleashed. And unfortunately, in some states like Alabama, Florida, Texas, and others, they've actually been passed into law and are wreaking havoc on our communities. Thankfully, in Pennsylvania, that hasn't happened yet. But we saw this bill get introduced in 2021, and we said, no, this is not okay. The people who introduced it in the state legislature hosted a hearing in which they shared awful lies about LGBTQ youth and attacked the community, lots of misinformation, lots of things that weren't medically accurate, made inferences about young girls' safety around trans folks, just shared the most horrible things in this public and official platform of the state legislature's official record and hearings. And so we came together as a group of neighbors, trans adults, parents of trans youth, educators, just people across the state who said, this is not okay. We do not want this to happen here. And thankfully, as a result of some of our organizing, as well as the other side just lacking the votes in a purple state, one of the few purple states left, like Pennsylvania, HB 972 did not pass and did not become the law of Pennsylvania. But it's not all good news. Unfortunately, as we were organizing, we started to realize just how much of a problem we do have, because at the local level, school boards and municipalities were working with groups like Moms for Liberty and conservative legal groups to actually write and introduce the same type of heinous policies that attack our kids as HB 972, but just instituting them at the school board level. And some of these policies include banning books that include LGBTQ characters, making it so that trans kids like HB 972 cannot participate in school sports or use the correct facilities for their gender, as well as just protecting folks' rights to misgender trans kids and introduce almost don't say gay-esque policies where no discussions of LGBTQ identities can be talked about at young ages, and many others. And bullying has become rampant. So we realized our mission was not over at all just by defeating the bills at the state level, but that there are these policies that are happening and that kids are suffering all over the state in school boards and municipalities that are attacking their rights. So I want to turn it over to Parker, who has been doing so much amazing work on the ground in one of the areas where a lot of these attacks are happening, to share more about what the environment is like on the ground that has prompted us to keep organizing.
Thank you, Day. Yes, one of the reasons I'm so glad to be part of the PA Coalition for Trans Youth is to bring the experiences that I hear as a local community leader in Lancaster County to the coalition, and to be able to help write statewide protections for our queer youth. Because as Day was saying, unfortunately, these local school boards, municipalities, all these little councils in all these places, they'll keep making their own little rules and policies. And if we don't have statewide protections, then we keep ending up putting out these little fires all over the place. And so what we really need is that fire blanket over the entire state, that is protections for our community. And again, as Day was saying, with it being a purple state, we have just as much issues passing the protections as they do passing some of these discriminatory bills. But then we see on the ground these school boards still passing things, like our local Hempfield school board had passed an anti-trans athlete policy. And that's still there because school boards can kind of do what they want. And what we're seeing is that trickle down now. And I was unfortunately just supporting a parent whose kid's house was vandalized. Their pride things were taken down and ripped up and thrown into the creek near their house. And that's what's happening on the ground when things like this happen in school boards and in these local municipalities. But again, there is two sides to this coin, and we are doing the community work on the ground with these families. These personal connections are super important to make sure that we are supporting the actual community members who are affected by these policies and bills and everything happening. Because again, even when these bills don't pass, it's something that these local municipalities and school boards can point to and say, oh, look, see, that's a great idea. So seeing, even if it's not passing, seeing our legislation that's written to protect our community also can affect the culture in that way. So it is really important, even if it's not passed yet, just to see our representatives putting forth legislation to protect our community. So to speak a little bit more on our successes and where we're going with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rhea.
Thank you, Parker. So we've had a lot of achievements, I feel like, over the past few years. And one of them is the rallies that we put together. We've had several rallies on the state capitol steps. And these rallies are very motivating and energizing for the community. It gives people hope. And in addition to this, and these rallies began before we had our Safe and Equal Schools package. And so as we've moved forward, these rallies that we have include community lobbying, where we train people how to talk with their representatives and give them the tools they need to advocate for themselves and their community. And what we also do with our achievements is we build community, because in addition to trans adults like ourselves and parents of trans youth, we bring organizations together from across the state. And after the rallies, we have had wonderful community building achievements and recognition from the community, such as last year when we had the pizza at Glow in Harrisburg, and just the extraordinary response from the community. And we've also had barbecues, community barbecues. So we have, after doing all these rallies and doing these discussions with lawmakers, we've been sitting down weekly with lawmakers. We came up with a package of bills. This is the Safe and Equal Schools bills. And there are 4 bills, and each deals with a different area in the schools because the Fairness Act, which hasn't passed yet, doesn't cover schools. That's something we found out in our research. So we worked collaboratively with lawmakers to put these bills together, HB 1997, HB 1998, HB 1999, and HB 2024. And each one of these bills helps address things like ensuring that we have education in schools that includes LGBTQ plus people and our achievements. Ramping up and strengthening anti-bullying policies, making sure that trans youths have safe access to bathrooms and are able to be on sports teams, and making sure new construction will include gender-neutral bathrooms, et cetera. So these bills together are like a Fairness Act for schools. So, and this is one of our great achievements. So now when we go to lobby in Harrisburg, and also at our local level, we are then now talking about these bills, and it's a way to really help bring the community together. We use these bills help us have conversations with people and gives them hope because they see these bills, they see the chance that whether it be their children or themselves, or anybody else, they see that there's a possibility that we can have truly safe and equal schools where kids feel safe.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rhea. We are really wanting to talk about not only what we've already done, which is draft these bills and begin to introduce them around the state, but also our ambitions for the future and where we want to go from here. So I can introduce that and then see what my friends here want to add to it. But so often lately in Pennsylvania, but across the country and maybe the world, depending on wherever you're, watching this from, we as LGBTQ people, and especially trans folks, are on the defensive and constantly under attack and constantly trying to just almost whack-a-mole with bad bills, right? So this became really important to us to at least model that we can do something proactive. We don't have to only ever be on the defensive. We can be drafting positive legislation. We can be organizing, we can be collaborating with various organizations that we work with to support youth now and to work towards a state and a country and a world where all of our young people are safe and equal in school, at home, in businesses, in public, wherever they are. And that feels like important work, not only to win the material change of passing these bills, but also because of like what Rhea and Parker mentioned, the support for folks' spirits, to give people hope, to not only ever be like in a defensive crouch, but to also be able to point to something positive and hopeful and feel some sense of momentum towards a goal instead of just constantly hoping that the worst doesn't happen. And so from my perspective, some of our ambitions are absolutely to get these bills passed. And whether that happens this year or more likely whether that happens in a future legislative session, such as in 2025, we will not stop until the laws get changed. And I think that kind of resilience and commitment is important. And at the same time, we've already been networking with so many educators, so many parents. Our ambitions are broader than that, where we want to continue to do more outreach at Pride Fests and at other community events, whether or not they're LGBTQ focused. We want to build on some of the events that we've done in the past, like the barbecue for LGBTQ families and supporters that just gives people a chance to kind of let their hair down and feel a little bit more relaxed and around like-minded people and just enjoy some free food and music. And we want to do some more work of educating legislators, but also the public, because there is so much misinformation out there. There's so many lies. But as people get to know the truth, as people get to know trans folks ourselves, then they don't hold these biases that they currently hold just because they've heard some lies because they haven't met anyone personally. So those are just a few things I'm thinking about in terms of like where we go from here as a coalition, what our ambitions might be. But I want to kick it to Parker and then Rhea to just see, you know, other things that I might not have mentioned that we're hoping to accomplish.
Well, mine is all about the community building. So you've touched on a bit of it, but just to reiterate a little bit of what both Rhea and Dave touched on, you know, it was one of our early rallies that it was just pouring rain. So we had maybe 35 or 40 attendees. But I'll tell you that few of those attendees had reached out to me prior to that rally, had asked me some questions. It was a parent who really wanted to bring their trans kid, their lesbian niece. I believe their lesbian niece's partner was there as well. And these were teenagers. And that parent found me right after the rally, came up and couldn't thank me enough. They had driven like 3.5 hours each way to be there. But just being able to see the representation, see trans adults being happy and supporting their kids, that meant the world to them. And so just hearing experiences like that over and over, like there was a father who actually just happened to be at the park that we had the barbecue at with his trans kid who came over and just was like, hey, you know, I had no idea this was happening here today. But I just wanted to let you know, like, I'm so happy that you're here representing because my trans kid is over there playing on the playground. So thanks. Stuff like that connection with the community is amazing to me, and means the world to me. So that's one of the big accomplishments that I see us on a daily basis having is those community successes. So, Rhea, you want to add to that?
Yeah, adding to what the wonderful things that you just said there, I believe that one of our goals as a literal coalition is to bring together statewide organizations and to continue to grow that network. But like you said, we give hope to trans individuals like ourselves, but also the parents of trans youth who feel vulnerable and who feel hopeless sometimes because of what they're seeing happening with the attacks on the schools and what's going on across the country. So what we do gives it feels really good when like Parker said, when people come up and let us know about their experiences or seeing us doing stuff and inspiring them. And even on one of the things I do with the coalition is social media work. So putting together social media content to help educate people about what's going on. And some of my content is very hopeful because I try to stay positive, and most of my demeanor is very positive. And I get a lot of feedback. I get a lot of people thanking me for that advocacy, and that really stems from what we do with the coalition. So we're going to keep broadening our network, moving forward, and just trying to create a cohesive network of organizations that might have their own little niches, but we come together and we really get some things done in the state.
Yes, thank you. That's so well said. We want to do this work in Pennsylvania, but we also know that folks may be tuning in from all over the place. So whether you're in our state or whether you're organizing in other places or whether you haven't organized yet, but you just want to start to learn more about it and potentially jump into the fight because we need you. We want to share some takeaways about what we've learned so far in this process and things that could be useful to you all watching at home. So I'll get started and then kick it to my friends in the coalition. We really have learned a lot, and we're continuing to learn a lot as we do this work. And one of the things that I want to highlight is that we really are a coalition. We try to focus on connecting with many other groups, many other leaders around the state, and to always be informed by local fights and local leaders. And even if we as the coalition are more focused at the moment on this statewide legislative battle to try to put out, as Parker put it, the little fires that have broken out all over the place, we also know that a lot of the time organizations that are statewide or national can get out ahead of other leaders and not be informed by the wisdom on the ground. So we really are made up of folks that are also connected to local communities and leaders in those communities and those fights. I'll just share a couple other things that we've learned, and I keep thinking of more even as we're sitting here, but we really have focused on building strong relationships with legislators and elected officials, and that is not always an easy or transparent process for folks, especially if we don't come from communities that have had that access in the past. But what we found is through meeting with as many legislators in Pennsylvania as would honestly answer our email or our call, that we've identified a few who are actually willing to meet with us regularly and organize with us and help us get this done. And we have different levels of relationships with folks. Some are more passive allies. Some are people that we're still trying to convince. Some won't take our call, are on the other side. But we've also found some people that we've been building strong relationships with, and they've been able to tell us things that we can't just find out through Google or through not having access about, oh, my colleague has a trans young person in their life, so they are actually open to this, even though they're in a party where you maybe thought that wasn't going to be the case. Or they can bring in some of their legislator friends and allies that might not have answered our email, but will answer their email and then get into the fight. So finding your kind of champions, even if there's only one or two who are authentic to wanting to support the fight, has been really helpful for us, and continuing to push them still where they need to be pushed, but also really utilizing those relationships to get into spaces that we normally wouldn't have access to. So I'm going to kick it to Rhea first and then Parker. But what are some other things we've learned? I know we've learned so much in just a few years here.
Wow. Well, I think we are tracking legislators. We are learning about individual legislators and pardon that, and where they lie, like they said, in terms of whether or not they're allies. I think that we have learned that I speak personally that the average person isn't as polarized as the political leaders on the right. And I see that in my experience every day. And so it gives me hope that we can reach individuals as we go across. So that's something I think we've learned, is that when you speak to people face to face, when you humanize our experiences, people tend to respond to that. So that's one thing I think I can offer there, is that as we're doing our work and as we're doing outreach and working in our communities, we're meeting people we didn't expect would be allies sometimes. Parker, anything to add?
Yeah, I think adding to what Day was saying about building that strong relationship with those certain allies you will find, I feel like creating like a weekly meeting or bi-weekly meeting, like really regularly working with someone, really solidifies that relationship. So, if you're trying to create that strong relationship, I think rather than just like, oh, we'll meet this one time with this person, if that's your person, set those regular meetings, make it a weekly meeting, make it a Zoom thing that's just set up for every week. Because I think that was really helpful day in creating that relationship.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we keep running into as well, that kind of some of what y'all have shared has sparked for me is this piece about misinformation. And Ray, I know the other day you were just sharing with our group more about some new kind of bad, not really true studies that have been released to try to scare folks into not supporting trans kids. And that's really wherever you're organizing, at least in the US, you're probably going to run into that you're not just fighting to win hearts and minds, you're fighting to correct the record and actually undo a lot of damage that might have already been done by folks that have gotten bad information and that aren't aware of the reality of what's happening on the ground. So I don't know, Ray, if you want to share a little bit more about just some of the misinformation stuff, because you're following so well so many of what the right is doing to target trans folks.
Well, the right has, through their billionaire funds, has funded several so-called studies. Lisa, what's her name? I forget her name now, but she did a couple of studies a few years ago that are cited constantly in legislation across the country. And these studies, quote unquote, which are very unscientific and have been widely discredited. This is where the terms like rapid onset gender dysphoria came from, which is not a term, but basically that was something that she created for the study that she made up. That was, oh, well, most people, 90% of trans people just like they suddenly get the gender dysphoria and it goes away over time. And so like that's where they got this whole 90% or whatever of people who are transgender stop being transgender, and that's all lies. But even though these have been widely discredited, they have no basis in reality. The test subjects were the bigoted parents of queer kids. They weren't even like the people themselves. These still get quoted all the time in hundreds, if not thousands, of bills across the country. And then now this new study that I happened to see on Fox News. So it's cited as a study. If you go to try and look it up, all you find is a right-wing newspaper that talks about it out of New York and the Fox News story. And the person they have as an expert is not even anybody. He has nothing to do with gender affirming care or anything. But the story was trying to say that puberty blockers have all kinds of maleffects, and they kept showing like the trans logo, and they kept showing like people holding signs saying protect trans youth, and where there's not even any way to find the study. They didn't say where it was from or who did it. It's very questionable, but this is what they do. You do this so that people can say, oh, but there's a study that says that this is dangerous without having like any information. So we're seeing that a lot, and we have to deal with a lot of propaganda that's being put out by the billionaire funded opposition we are dealing with.
Yeah, thank you for that. You have such a wealth of knowledge and following, what's happening on the other side. And that's another thing that we've learned is it's not helpful to get too in the weeds of just being down, letting it affect us too much to see what the other side is doing. But it's really helpful to know what the other side is doing because we have to be informed to be able to respond and to be able to organize with that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, I want to just send it to Parker for a second with whatever you might want to share about this. But I know you mentioned that there's been even, this week, a moment of vandalization on the ground. I'm wondering if you can share more, because I know there have been like tragic losses in the community, just what's happening on the ground to really hit home for anyone watching, like why organizing matters.
Yeah, unfortunately, vandalism is some of the least of our problems. We have had a loss of 5 transgender youth in just a little over a year. And that is, a combination of all these things. The toxic environment here, though, the, school policies. There was one of our children did reference in an interview right before they took their own life, right before I'm sorry, they were a victim of suicide. They said in an interview that their school was not allowed. They had gone to a Christian school, and their teacher was not allowed to use the name and pronouns that they wanted. So we, being in this conservative Christian area, are seeing a lot of loss from this discrimination. So yeah, we see the vandalization problems. That's actually why our organization got started. There was a pride flag that was vandalized in Lidditz, and through creating our first pride event is how I found out about a youth suicide that happened in 2019, just in the school district that I'm in, actually. So that is one of the things that had gotten Lidditz Chooses Love started, is those children not being statistics, but being our kids.
Yeah, thank you for that sobering, background. I think it really underlines what's at stake and why we decided to focus on schools and on youth, supporting youth, because we say it all the time, safe and equal schools, because we need both of those things to be true for every student. And right now that's not the case. And it's not just, I feel like the other side sometimes just wants to make everything into an online battle or a culture war battle. And we're trying to show, these have real costs, real human costs. It costs the lives of young people. This is about more than who gets to win the news cycle or who picks up some votes here or there for their rhetoric. This impacts young people. And one of the things that we found interesting as we continue to do research with reputable sources, not the kind that Rhea was talking about on the other side, is that there have actually been studies on youth mental health and how youth feel about their school environment, where in school districts where LGBTQ young people have more policies that support them, students in general feel safer and have better mental health outcomes in schools, whether or not they themselves are LGBTQ. I think that speaks to the fact that these kind of attacks on young people create an unhealthy environment for everybody, where suddenly students feel like going to school is not just about learning or just about seeing their friends, but becomes this toxic environment where adults oftentimes are fighting over, what books they should read and if their friend should be able to use the bathroom. And that just not only is, as Parker mentioned, like trickles down and emboldens bullies, but it also creates an environment where even students that may not be directly impacted are not feeling as safe and are not enjoying school as much because it's become kind of a toxic environment. So I want to just see, having said that, if Ray or Parker, if there's other things, if you can rack your brain so we can give people as much useful info as possible, what other tips you would give? Someone's just getting started in organizing, someone's just wanting to become a part of the fight, but they're not sure how or what to do to be successful. What would you tell them?
Mind if I go first, Raya?
Go ahead.
I'll just say real quick to check your local meetings, school board meetings, council meetings. Go, speak up for our community. If you think that these school boards are immovable, hey, you might be right. But if you go and you speak at the school board meeting, that's on record. And that's on record that you support our community, and those kids will find out. So go and support the community just to support the community, not because you think you're going to convince somebody on a board of something. You probably aren't. So a lot of people have made up their minds on some of these boards, and they have their own agendas and things that they're going to do. But go and speak up for our community, in your community, for your community.
I think, in addition to that, too, if somebody is looking for a way to get involved, you can check with local LGBT community centers sometimes, or you can check with local pride organizations and other queer-run organizations. They'll usually have connections that they can lead you to, or you can volunteer with them yourself. So, and you can usually do a quick check on Google, like LGBTQ organizations near me, and that can be a way to also just find organizations by you if you're not sure, if you're just new to all this.
Yes, that's great advice. I feel like we've also, as a coalition, been finding our people, and when someone shows up consistently or shows enthusiasm, bring them in and just say, like, we want to keep meeting with you. We want to keep having you be a leader and just talking together about what we can accomplish, because we're now getting to the point where we have a great leadership team and we all have different skills. Some of us are amazing at the digital communications and social media. Some of us are amazing at, knowing all the people in the community and being able to connect them and bring them into a meeting. Some folks are really great at, connecting with even more community groups. Some folks have been the people who can read through the policy language with a fine-tooth comb and find all the different details that we need to be thinking about. Not every person has every skill, so getting a group together where you can really help each other and make each other stronger and fill in the gaps of each other's knowledge, I think, is really helpful. I think with the time we have left, maybe we could share a couple of the heartwarming stories of what keeps us going in our organizing. I know you've shared a little bit of people who've come up to us, which keeps us going and makes us feel like this is reaching people. But I'll start and then I'll send it to Rhea and then Parker. But one of the things that I'm really feeling inspired by at the moment is that at our first big rally at the Capitol, the Pennsylvania Capitol last year for Trans Day Visibility, we had a mom come with her little girl who is transgender. And they had fun. They said hi. They were inspired by the speeches. The little girl played with other youth that were there. It was a heartwarming moment. As folks mentioned, we had like a social pizza party time, and we ended up having like overflow and having to order more food because we didn't expect so many people to show up and want to keep hanging out with us after that event. But what's happened is that mom went to the next rally, kept up to date with what we were doing on social media. And then as we were planning this Trans Day of Visibility rally, actually reached out to me privately and said, we've been to these rallies in the past as an attendee. This time, my little girl said she wants to be a speaker. We want to speak, like we want to be a part of who's sharing. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. How can we make sure you feel safe and comfortable? And they ended up kicking off our rally just a couple weeks ago at the PA State Capitol, and there wasn't a dry eye there because it was just so beautiful to see this little girl sharing that she wants to grow up and have a successful, happy life and fight for her rights, and to have her mom there supporting her. And that was just this full circle moment where people who were really getting involved just in the audience became a key speaker and a leader in the fight just by seeing what we were doing. And just that is the moment where you were like, okay, this is reaching someone, this has mattered to someone. So There's many more stories like that, though. I'm hoping you have one in mind, Rhea, if you want to share.
I do. The first rally we did where we were doing our community lobbying, and I had put together that presentation that we showed, and we had just a huge number of people who stayed after to get lunch and then to divide up into teams and then go out and talk to representatives. And I just remember with the team that I had with me, nobody in that team had ever spend time talking with lawmakers. And fortunately, I have experience doing that because I've done work with other groups, particularly one here in the state, an anti-corruption group in the state called March on Harrisburg. And they did a lot of training, and I learned a lot from them because when I first started organizing with them, I didn't know what I was doing. And so just to have after that, the comments that I got from the people that I was with and from people that I talked to back when we met back to debrief, and how inspired they were and how motivated they were to keep doing this, to keep doing this work for what we're talking about, but just to advocate for anything. It just gave them so much confidence, and they felt empowered. And I thought that was beautiful. That they understand, hey, we can set these meetings up ourselves as community members, and we can talk to these representatives because they're our representatives, and they are supposed to listen to us. So that's one I can say off the top of my head.
Well,
Parker?
Day, speaking of young activists speaking at our rallies makes me think of giving another young activist from Hempfield who, felt the need to speak up, plenty of space to speak. It's great to be able to provide safe space for a young trans activist to speak up for themselves, because it is nerve-wracking speaking in public, right? So being able to give a young person that outlet where they know if there's a break in their speech, if they stumble, that everybody in the audience is just going to be cheering them on until they're ready to go again. So giving kids that space, but also really providing the trans joy. That's a huge part of what I like doing, what I feel is a necessary aspect, and that again connects so much with the youth here. We provide a family karaoke event once a month, and there are plenty of middle school, younger even kids who come sing their little hearts out, dance around, have a great time. And we all know that, yeah, we can be 4 years old and transgender. There are some of us who have known forever, and those kids need some place to feel safe. Those kids need to know that they can go somewhere and just be themselves. And knowing that we can provide that space, again, means the world to me.
Yes, I love that. I think before we get into just how to get involved, Rhea, would you be able to read through the list of the bills and a little bit of the detail around them if you have that in front of you? Or I can go through it too.
I do, yes. So we have 4 bills. So House Bill 1997, it focuses on establishing clear anti-discrimination policies in public schools that really protects all students from harassment, based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender, as well as gender expression and other factors. And then you have House Bill 1998. And this one is really about curriculum. It's about making sure that the school curriculums include the contributions of LGBTQ plus individuals in society and our experiences. And House Bill 1999, this one really gets into strengthening anti-bullying policies, both in and outside of school, which is greatly needed because, as we spoke about earlier, we have lost people because of bullying in our county. And then House Bill 2024. This one is specifically deals with bathrooms and locker rooms, ensuring that trans students have access to the bathrooms according to their gender. It also has a provision in there that would ensure that new construction would have like gender neutral facilities and accommodations. So that's the bills. Day or Parker, do you want to add to that?
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, I think we're just excited for anyone who's watching to let you know how we can connect.
Yeah, absolutely. What upcoming events, if any, do you have that you would like to promote?
We are planning a few different events to be a part of for Pride, doing outreach. We're going to be at Lidditz Pride. Parker, I don't know if you want to share anything about that. Oh, you're still on mute.
I double tapped. June 29th in Lidditz Springs Park.
Yes, they do so much great work on that. And we'll be at other Pride Fests. And we're also finalizing some plans for some social media days of action and lobbying days where we can continue to put these bills in front of legislators and make the case.
Absolutely, let us know how we can help amplify that as well. As an organization, we would love to make sure that we're pushing for all of the good work that you guys are doing.
Yes,
And-
definitely.
And where can the audience find you? Any social media or website?
Yes. So if you're in Pennsylvania, we definitely want to hear from you. Even if you're not, we'd love to get connected so that we can support whatever you're doing and share more of our learned lessons. So you can find us at PAC4TY.org. That's our website where we'll be updating about more of our upcoming events, as well as you'll find some more info about the bills that Rhea was talking about. And Rhea is on our digital comms team. So do you want to share anything about our social media presence as well?
Yes, well, we have our presence on Facebook. You can type in Pennsylvania Coalition for Trans Youth and you'll find us on there. In terms of other social media like Instagram and TikTok, PAC4TY is the way you would find us on there. And there are individuals such as myself and AJ and Chris also have our own social media where we do education. And so we encourage you to check those out because that's where we really try to help reach people as well on a broader scale.
Yes. And when in doubt, PAC4TY.org. We'd love to hear from you. There's a contact page that'll send an email directly to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing today, all of you. I definitely learned something from it. I hope the viewers all did as well. A lot to consider. I had never considered trying to go to local school meetings and being an advocate in those ways. So that's something I'm definitely going to look into, and I hope more people do in their own respective communities and cities. That's a great idea that I think more people should do. It's not even difficult. It's not that hard. So that's a great resource for people to know about, which is great. But yeah, thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for our first event. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay.